For anybody who's thinking about the Wenden House program, I would say that it's an opportunity to get a view of the Reformation that you probably can't get anywhere else.
It's amazing that no one is doing this. The most amazing thing about translating works that have never been translated for 500 years or, less than 500 years, but almost there. The most amazing feeling is just, why isn't anyone doing this? And just wondering what would happen if no one ever read these works, because they've just been neglected. No one's reading them. They're out there. If you know Latin, there is a library right underneath your feet, which you don't know about. And so being able to translate them, being the first one to translate this thing that's never been translated before, is very, very exciting.
So we are looking at both Reformation literature and Reformation theology because we're trying to look at the Reformation holistically. We have authors who were not just interested in theology, but were interested in humanity and the humanities. And they were writing to an audience who was largely probably not going to be reading theological treatises and not consuming that kind of material. So we're able to see how their literature, their more accessible writing, would be speaking to their audience in a way that's different from the way their theology was speaking to their audience.
Right now, the theological approach to the Reformation is today's modus operandi. I mean, that's how you approach the Reformation. Absent that, you can get into the sociological history of the Reformation if you approach the Reformation through a history department in a university or in a college or university. But you don't understand, you don't get the insight into the literature that the Reformers are developing and how they're channeling classical thought and classical civilization and classical literature through their own writings to further the ideals of the Reformation.
What the projects of Wenden House and the one that I'm working on, I hope will offer the world is, first, going a little bit off the beaten path into a different kind of work. We're not translating theology books. The theology books have been preserved and people continue to study them. But these are fictional or more artistic stuff. And what we often forget is that the Reformers were engaged in their project because they came straight from the humanist Renaissance, which was a way of reading which looked at texts very carefully, and they'd already applied this to pagan texts. And then Luther was the one who really, and Melanchthon, applied it to all kinds to the Christian text, and that's how they get their discovery of the doctrine of justification. And we've preserved a lot of that, but we've often lost is the ability to read texts and to realize the depth and the amazing storehouse of learning and just the beautiful. These texts are just beautiful. They're just good.
I'm translating a work by a Spanish reformer published in 1546 called The True History of the Life of the Holy Man Juan Diaz of Spain, and the title goes on for an insanely long time. My work translating this and giving it to people to access in English will give people a perspective on the Reformation that they can't find in the books you can buy at Barnes & Noble's. Because it provides a couple of things: a perspective on the Reformation from a Spanish reformer, and narrating life of a Spanish reformer, so that's kind of a unique element. And then also it's showing the breadth of the interests of the reformers. They're not only writing theology or philosophy, they're also writing historiography and poetry and plays.
And so, I'm hoping that people will read them and be like, wait, people wrote really good stuff down there. It's like that part in Prince Caspian where all the children come back to Narnia to Cair Paravel, to the castle, and they find in the basement all these treasures, all these armories, all these jewels from the glory days, and nobody knows about them.
And so Wenden House gives the students insight into that aspect of the Reformation that you can't get anywhere else. And this is crucial today because many of us are involved in the classical Christian movement. And the classical Christian movement is a wonderful movement, but it often needs direction. It often needs redirection. And the best way to do that is to look back to the Reformation and see how did they do the classics in their educational system within Reformation ideas back then. And so the Wenden student can see firsthand how that's done and be in a position to contribute to the direction of the classical Christian movement today.